Frankenstein's monster is arguably the tragic literary monster, the blueprint for every misunderstood creature that followed. He's a walking metaphor for rejection, alienation, and the pain of knowing what love is without ever being allowed to receive it. He's the saddest guy at the masquerade, and the mask he wears isn't one he chose. It's the one his creator stitched together to use as his face. What made him so uniquely tragic is that his monstrosity isn't inherent. He doesn't begin as evil or vengeful. Writer Mary Shelley gives us a being who starts life as a blank slate, curious, gentle, even a little poetic. He marvels at the beauty of nature and longs for human connection. He only turns violent after repeated and merciless rejection. He is feared not for what he does, but for how he looks, and it drives him to lonely despair. But when James Gunn decided to adapt this character for his new animated series Creature Commandos, he took that basic blueprint and skewed it to the point that his creature, Eric Frankenstein, is an entirely different character. To help explain this further, let's first talk about the origins of Frankenstein's monster. An abomination assembled from the corpses of condemned men, the creature was never named. He was abandoned before he could even ask the right questions about himself. Victor Frankenstein, the Swiss scientist who plays God through grave robbing and lightning bolts, doesn't just create him, he defined him through his absence, leaving him to figure out how to get by in a world that recoils at the sight of him. What elevates him above other tragic figures is the very humanity of his suffering. Shelley makes sure we hear the creature's voice directly through lengthy, introspective monologues filled with longing, sorrow, and surprisingly elegant prose for someone that was only born recently. He's not a mindless brute on a rampage as he is sometimes presented in other media. Instead, he's a thesis on how society creates its own demons. The monster isn't scary because he kills, he's scary because we understand why he kills, and somewhere in the dark corners of our empathy, we suspect we might have done the same thing. He seeks companionship, understanding, even love, but is met at every turn with horror and violence. Villagers throw stones, strangers scream. His own creator flees the moment he opens his eyes. And this is why the creature commits acts of undeniable cruelty. He murders Victor's younger brother, frames an innocent woman, and later kills Victor's best friend and wife. These are not the acts of a misunderstood child, they're the calculated acts of someone who became a monster, not someone who began as one. That's the beauty of Shelley's work. The creature doesn't emerge from the lab evil, cackling and howling in the night. He becomes that way because of how the world treats him. The tragedy then lies in the lost potential. The creature teaches himself to speak, read, and even philosophize. He wants nothing more than a place in the world, a companion, someone to look past his appearance and see the mind and soul within. But time and again he's shown that such dreams are impossible. And when Victor refuses to make him a mate, the creature snaps. Victor, meanwhile, is no hero. His tragedy is also self-inflicted. Obsessed with playing God, he gives life to something he neither understands nor takes responsibility for. In shirking that responsibility, he creates his own tormentor and inadvertently destroys his entire family. In the end, the creature weeps over Victor's corpse and disappears into the Arctic waste. DC Comics have featured many Frankenstein's monster-like creatures over the years, including original Creature Commandos member Elliot Taylor, and even one that fought Batman. But in 2006, writer Grant Morrison introduced Mary Shelley's version of the creature to the comics as part of his Seven Soldiers of Victory series. After awakening from his slumber in the present day, the creature, who now called himself Frank, became a monster hunter. He was still eloquent, a little poetic, but now carried a massive sword and pistols. He travelled the Earth, sometimes as an agent of the secret agency SHADE, the Superhuman Advanced Defense Executive, where he worked with the Creature Commandos to annihilate any monstrous threat to humanity. He's not a significant character at all. His own series, Frankenstein and the Agents of SHADE, lasted just over a dozen issues before it was cancelled, but it's important to mention him because of how different he is to Eric Frankenstein. Where Frank is a hero who ultimately doesn't really care about praise and adulation, Eric Frankenstein is a short-tempered neurotic stalker. And one thing that I don't think gets mentioned enough is that the creature was never given a name. In the comics, it took the name Frankenstein after its creator's death and shortened it to Frank and made it its own. Eric, meanwhile, was named by Victor Frankenstein, and I think that distinction is significant. They don't really elaborate on Victor and Eric's relationship all that much in the show. All we see in their first appearance is their meeting in a church after they had robbed some graves to collect body parts for Victor to assemble into a bride for Eric. Where Victor's refusal to bring the bride to life for the creature led to his downfall in the book, and Frank generally had an amicable relationship with the bride in the comics, Eric's relationship with the bride is 100% toxic. Eric decided that he was going to own her before she was even created. He picked her body parts out from a selection, like he was placing an order at Subway, and had no interest in her wants and desires. In his mind, she was his property before she was even brought to life, and she had to do what he said. When the bride rejected his advances, he cried and screamed like a child. You could argue at that point in his life he was still relatively young and inexperienced, but that's making excuses for him. I could potentially accept that for this early period of his life anyway, but what about the following 150 or so years of pursuing the bride, refusing to take no for an answer? Likewise, there are some that call Eric a hero for killing Victor after he learned that he had groomed and abused the bride. But he didn't do it out of disgust, he did it out of jealousy. Note how he watches the two and weeps. This isn't a reaction of rage or indignation, he's upset that his property is being misused. And I think that some of the people that are out there defending Eric's actions may see something of themselves in him. Feelings of unrequited love are a universal experience that a lot of people can relate to, but Eric takes things way too far. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't any similarities between Eric and the creature or Frank. He's eloquent and can be quite emotional, lashing out in rage when things don't go his way. He is generally quick to anger, to make threats and deliver on them. And I agree that he is something of a tragic figure. He didn't ask to exist, and his birth came as a result of Victor Frankenstein trying to play God. Frankenstein is also a villain for bringing his creations to life without really taking responsibility for them. And the way he groomed the bride is despicable. We don't know for certain, but if Creature Commandos is anything like the original book, then Victor wouldn't have been as attentive to Eric as he had been the bride. And we all know why. But still, being disappointed in life doesn't excuse his actions. He lies to himself, saying that the bride is just playing hard to get and it's all part of their courtship. But then, whenever he's presented with evidence to the contrary, he lashes out. For instance, when he sees the bride speaking to Rick Flag, he assumes that she's in love with him and immediately plots to kill him, and in the process kills the mercenaries he had hired to help him spy on the bride. He's jealous, selfish, and treacherous. Of course, as soon as he learns that he had jumped to conclusions, he's quick to befriend Rick Flag. Not necessarily because he likes him, but because he thinks that Flag can influence the bride's opinion of him. He may call Flag his best friend, but when he has his spine broken by Clayface, Eric is quick to dump him at a hospital and run away. Similarly, he murdered the kindly old woman who nursed him back to health after the bride set him and Victor's lab on fire. The two spent many months together building a friendship, but when he fully recovered, he murdered her and took her dog. He clearly can make friends because he is well-spoken, oddly funny, and quite eloquent. But even after hundreds of years of life, he's still an inexperienced juvenile. I'd suspect he suffered from brain rot if the bride weren't so mentally sound, generally speaking. Eric's entire subplot in the first season of Creature Commandos culminates in his return to Pokolistan, where the bride is on a mission to assassinate the genocidal princess who plots to start World War III. But it is not the emotional reunion he had hoped for. Instead, the bride shoots him in the chest the second she lays eyes on him, causing him to fall hundreds of feet. Later, she comes across his body and she shoots him again for good measure, calling him a stalker. And yet Eric still doesn't get the message. Once again, he's reliant on the kindness of strangers as another old woman takes him in and nurses him back to health. Unlike the creature, who never found peace in humanity, or Frankenstein, who was only really embraced by other monsters, Eric is generally accepted, especially in Pokolistan. The first time we see him in the series, he's on a party boat with a bunch of dancing, scantily clad women. He has agents that contact him with information on the bride's movements. He's not pursued by angry villagers with pitchforks and burning torches. No, Eric Frankenstein is not the creature. He's not Shelley's beautiful tragedy, nor Morrison's sword-swinging monster hunter, and not even the misunderstood outsider we've come to quietly root for. He's a cautionary tale in designer stitches, a man who mistakes obsession for love, who wraps his loneliness in entitlement and calls it romance. He doesn't suffer in silence like the original creature, nor does he rise above it like Frank. Eric weaponizes his pain. He feeds it, nurtures it, and justifies it. He's what happens when the monster believes his own excuses. And while he may cry and rage and wax poetic in Gothic churches, don't be fooled. Eric Frankenstein isn't a tragic hero. He's a narcissist in a horror mask, chasing a version of love that looks a lot more like control. The creature wanted to be seen for who he truly was. Eric wants the world to see him the way he sees himself. One is a monster made by society. The other is a monster who made himself. Okay, that's it for this week's essay. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really enjoyed the video and have the means, please consider making use of the thanks button to send a buck or two my way, because every little helps. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month. This will get you early access to my weekly video essay, priority responses to your comments, members-only videos, custom emojis, and an icon on your profile indicating that you're one of my people. And special thanks to my channel members. Everyone who was a member at the time of this video's creation is listed on the screen right now. If you want to see your name amongst all these wonderful people, join the channel now. Next time, I'll be back on Friday to talk about one of the most persistent, obsessive and neurotic villains from Batman the Animated Series. Yes, he's finally getting his own video. We're talking about Temple Fugate, the Clock King. And then next Monday, it's time to talk about the winner from my most recent The Batman villain poll, the nefarious Hugo Strange, and his unending quest to understand the criminal psyche. Hope to see you then.